What's going on YouTube? Bacon here bringing another video. This one going to be my week 5 battle for the SSBL Minors. This week we are taking on Virgie, coach of the Kelowna Mawile. He's coming into this game at 2-2 and we're coming in at 4-0. Virgie's a very good battler. He's in the MWPA Mercury division, which for those of you who don't know is the highest division in the MWPA in terms of skill tiers, basically, and he actually won that division last season, so very good battler. He's in OLT Harmony with us as well. I believe he placed either 3rd or 4th going into playoffs, so he was on the other side of the bracket from us in terms of seeding, but obviously very, very strong battler. We're actually playing for MWPA on the same team, going into the League War tournament, which is ongoing right now. MWPA is currently in the semifinals match, I believe, against MLG this week. So he's been a part of that as well. And then also he's actually on my DPL team. So yeah, I did end up getting drafted for the DPL, which was great. I was really, really happy to get drafted by the big creators, coached by Money Guy and Blue. Big shout out to them for drafting me. Hopefully I can do some work this season in the DPL. At the very least, I'll be active in chat. I'll be helping team build, things like that. But yeah, Virgie and I are on the same team, so I've gotten to know him decently well, as far as you can know somebody through the internet, I guess, in terms of at least Pokemon. And he seems like a really nice guy, and he's a good battler, obviously. He's just not on super often because I think he just doesn't have Discord open very frequently. But we were able to get in touch for this battle, and yeah, let's get right into the team builder here. So Virgie's team consists of the Landorus Therian form, Tornadus Therian form, Victini, Jirachi, Tapu Bulu, Mega Tyranitar, Vikavolt, Noivern, Alamamola, and Cacturn. Z users are the Tornadus, Vikavolt, and Cacturn. So off the bat, couple things. I don't have great Victini switch-ins. I'm thinking he'd lean a little more towards the special side because he's probably going to want Glaciate to hit my Gliscor, Energy Ball to hit my Rotom Wash, and then some kind of Fire-type move, probably Blue Flare if he's running the special set. He could also run Mix with V-Create or something like that. And then his last move is kind of up in the air. He could run something like Psychic or then Headbutt if he's, depending on whether he's running full special, or he could run something like Substitute, which I think makes a good bit of sense for dodging Sucker Punches from my Mega Mawile. It could also potentially be Colbur Berry on his Victini to try not to get Pursuit Trapped by my Muck or hit by my Sucker Punch on my Mega Mawile. So those are just a few of the considerations I was coming into this week thinking about. Physically defensive, Gliscor tends to handle Victini okay. Like if he's Choice Band, that's not great, but I at least have the Rotom Wash to help out, kind of in a supplemental capacity there. So I kind of felt like he would lean a little more heavily towards the specially invested side, and I think it's kind of difficult for him to fit on that Psychic type move for that if he is running special. Like I think Glaciate, Energy Ball, like I mentioned, and then Fire type move, and probably Substitute. He could also run like Flame Charge or something like that if he wants to try and get some cheeky speed boosts going. Something like that I could see from the Victini set, but I don't think he'd be running Psychic coverage, which we'll get into later in my team builder here. Also, his Tornadus is a huge threat to me. Kind of my only good switch-ins to Tornadus are my Rotom Wash and my Muck. Muck because it can be running Berry, take a Z, I believe I take a Hurricane into Z Hurricane, but we'll get into that in my team builder aspect. But obviously having the Berry there is going to be helpful for me switching in on the Tornadus over the course of the match. If he's knocking off items, that's not so great for me, but at the very least, Muck can come in on non-knockoff variants of Tornadus without worrying too much about taking some damage. And Rotom Wash can obviously come in on his Flying Stab pretty well. Again, he can kind of take advantage of that with U-turn and with knockoff to some extent, so I have to watch out for that over the course of the match. But Tornadus and Victini just form a really nice U-turn offensive core. It's going to be really difficult for me to deal with in this matchup. And then kind of rounding that out with Tapu Bulu on the other side. Like if he can U-turn out into Tapu Bulu, predicting my Rotom Wash, he's going to be able to get a lot of damage off of my team because I really don't have great switch-ins for Tapu Bulu, just clicking grass type moves. Obviously, my Mega Mawile can take them okay, but that's not really what you want to be using Mega Mawile for. Gliscor really can't do anything back anyways, not that it's taking more than 2 Wood Hammers. Superior can kind of take a hit, but at least you'd be setting Grassy Terrain for me, I guess. And like, it's kind of a weird matchup with the Tapu Bulu because it hits my team so hard, but it also gives my team certain advantages, like my Muck really appreciates the Grassy Terrain, Superior really appreciates the Grassy Terrain, things like that. I think it just kind of makes it a weird matchup for the Tapu Bulu. And lastly, I think he was definitely going to be bringing his Tyranitar to this matchup, because it's really the only thing on his team that deals with my Blacephalon. Triscarp Blacephalon kind of eats through his team if he doesn't bring the Tyranitar, so I do anticipate seeing that thing bring probably Pursuit, Stealth Rock, something like that from the Mega Tyranitar. You could also run a DD set if he wants to, because if I am choice locked Blacephalon, obviously I'm not going to be doing anything to him. He could potentially get a free turn of setup that way. So that's something I definitely need to keep in mind over the course of the match. So yeah, looking at my team builder now, the first thing I put on my team here was Rotom Wash, Eats Tide Pods, running Leftovers, Hydro Pump, Volt Switch, Discharge, and THICC, running max HP, a good bit of physical defense investment to help me take on physical variants of Victini a little bit better. Can also take hits from the Tyranitar to some extent, and be able to at least get some status off on that thing in return with like THICC. He's obviously got to fear me having Will-O-Wisp anyways on my Rotom Wash, so he probably doesn't want his Tyranitar getting burned. THICC I just felt like was generally better than Will-O-Wisp in this game for wearing down his team. Things like Victini, I can just throw off a THICC versus, probably shouldn't want to stay in on me anyways, but I can throw off a THICC predicting a switch into something like Tapu Bulu, and I'd kind of rather have that thing toxic than burned to some extent, because that's going to really put that thing on a timer over the course of the match, and to some extent at least negate his grassy terrain recovery. THICC is also really nice for wearing down things like the Landorus if he's predicting me to go for an electric type move. Again, decent things to have burned, but also I feel like the THICC damage was way more valuable to me in this matchup, and especially when he could have things like the Alomomola going for like AV Mirror Coat type shenanigans or Wakanberry Mirror Coat type of shenanigans. I felt like THICC was just a very safe play for me in general in this game. I should also mention Discharges on there, just to try and snag some paras on things like Jirachi, if he's running a Choice Scarf variant of that, Speedy, Victini, stuff like that. Getting paras off on those things is also pretty nice. So Rotom's mostly here to eat a couple hits, get me some slow initiative with Volt Switch, and potentially get some status off on a couple of key members on his team. Next up here is 9 Inch Nails, the Lycanroc Dusk. I believe this is the first time I've used Lycanroc in this season of the SSBL. Just really hasn't had a whole lot of good matchups to this point in the season, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm actually running Focus Sash Lycanroc Dusk this week with Stealth Rock, Endeavor, Taunt, and a Accelerock. This is just a really good lead versus team. Obviously, Tornadus is a pretty decent lead on his end, so Lycanroc is obviously going to be a pretty good counter lead to that. You shouldn't want to stay in and take a Stone Edge or anything like that. You might U-turn to break my Focus Sash, which is fine by me. I can get my Stealth Rocks up immediately and really start to pressure his Victini and Torn upon switch in. He really doesn't have great options to remove other than the Tornadus itself, so obviously having a Stealth Rocker that beats Tornadus is really helpful to have. The Accelerock priority is nice, even if I'm not doing Endeavor plus Focus Sash shenanigans. Like, just having the Accelerock around things like Victini and Tornadus, Noivern, even Vikavolt, like, still does pretty good damage to his team, even without having the whole Endeavor plus Accelerock to kill something kind of deal. But otherwise, I can lead this pretty freely versus him. If he leads with Tapu Bulu, if he leads with Landorus, whatever, I can just set Stealth Rocks and then have him knock me down in my Focus Sash. I really don't care too much about Lycanroc in this game outside of keeping up Stealth Rocks to pressure that Tornadus and Victini upon switch, and that's going to be really critical this game, and making sure that those Pokemon are sufficiently chipped for me to win in the late game. Next up here is Alolan Muck, friend of Dave, running I have Pop Berry Gluttony, Knockoff, Poison Jab, Curse, and Recycle, running a kind of janky, handcrafted EVs type spread on this Alolan Muck. I can't tell you what all the investment's for, but I've got a little bit of Phys Def, a little bit of Spidef, max HP, a little bit of physical attack. Like, I'm sure I calced these things a couple weeks ago when this battle was played, but I don't remember what they were for anymore. Just a kind of weird, mixed offensive, defensive type of Alolan Muck. Gives me a decent switch into things like his Tapu Bulu, potentially, as long as he's not like choice banded, things like his Tornadus and the like. So I felt like Muck was kind of a must bring this week, just to have something that can eat up some specially offensive hits from things like his Tornadus, Noivern, and things like that. I felt like was really important in this matchup. And if I can get a couple curses up, I can start to beat his team down pretty handily 1v1, as long as he doesn't have a setup of his own. If I can get up a curse or two, I think I can potentially sweep this game with Alolan Muck in the late game. Next up here is Serp Sweat the Serperior, running Leftovers, Contrary Ability, Leaf Storm, Substitute, Hidden Power, Ice, and Glare. Running a decent bit of HP investment, but that's just because I only needed to creep down to his base 100s with my Serperior, because obviously I wasn't going to be outrunning the Tornadus anyways. He might want to switch in his Tornadus on me. I'm not really sure how you want to handle it. Like, you can come in with Tornadus and then you turn out to break the Substitute. It's a pretty decent play for him in general. He can obviously also come in on me with his Victini, because I do have to be kind of clicking Leaf Storm to boost my damage output if I want to do that. So getting a glare off on those things would be really nice, especially if it's like Choice Scarf Victini or something like that, or certainly getting a glare off on the Tornadus would be really nice for things like my Rotom Wash and such, to help me outspeed them later in the game. HP Ice is there specifically to hit the Noivern and the Landorus Therian. I felt like HP Ice was better than any other hidden powers I could have run this game. I guess I could have run like HP Fire to hit Jirachi, but I felt like I would rather paralyze Jirachi anyways, and it was better to get the HP Ice damage off on things like Noivern and things like Landorus Therian if I do get behind a substitute with some boosts. I felt like just having the HP Ice there was, in general, a little more valuable than having the HP Fire just for the Jirachi. So yeah, that's the superior set for this week. Next up, we've got Brain Blast the Blacephalon. Once again, running Choice Scarf Blacephalon with Shadow Ball, Fire Blast, Flamethrower, and Trick. Obviously, my team is generally pretty slow, so having the Choice Scarf option in Blacephalon this week is really nice. Like I mentioned in the kind of earlier part of this, I do need to watch out for his Tyranitar, potentially running Pursuit. Definitely going to have to double on that thing, probably once or twice over the course of the match, because Blacephalon does threaten a lot of Pokemon on his team, but it does not threaten Tyranitar at all. So I'm going to have to play my Blacephalon pretty aggressively in terms of doubling it in and things like that, and doubling back out. And if I can get up Stealth Rocks again, that's really something that's going to help to wear down his team over the course of the match. If I can get the Tyranitar to come in over and over and over again, predicting my Blacephalon to go for an attack while I just double out of it, I can really take advantage of those situations if my Stealth Rocks are up. And lastly here, we've got Yo Mama the Hariyama, running Rocky Helmet, Thick Fat, Close Combat, Knockoff, Sleep Talk, and Rest. Running Max Physical Defense, Max Spit Def. Obviously, you really don't need to invest in Hariyama's HP. You get a lot more mileage out of investing in his defenses. So Hariyama this week running a much bulkier set than normal. Running the Rocky Helmet as well to help me chip down all of his U-turners. Obviously, it's not really going to matter on the Tornadus. Not that I bring Hariyama in on a Tornadus anyways, when I have a Muck and a Rotom Wash in the back. But this is mainly here to help chip down things like the Victini, things like the Jirachi as they U-turn over the course of the match. It's also a really, really good physical defensive check to the Tyranitar. Obviously, I resist his dual stab, and I think he'd probably be carrying ice coverage for my Gliscor anyway, so there's really not a whole lot that Tyranitar should be able to do to me in this matchup. And I can also take two Choice Banded V-Crates from a Victini, which means I can knock it off and knock it out on the following turn, or at least get some Rocky Helmet chip off on it to keep it in range of my Blacephalon later in the match. Hariyama is just really valuable in this game in terms of being that physically defensive check that I need to have for the Mega Tyranitar. DD Tyranitar, like I mentioned, is pretty scary, but even just kind of offensive Stealth Rocker Tyranitar should definitely come to help deal with my Blacephalon. If I'm doubling out of Blacephalon, this is more than likely what I'm doubling into, predicting the Tyranitar. Obviously, I can just fire off some close combats versus team. Knockoff is also really nice to help remove items. Hits a Victini and the Jirachi particularly hard as well. That's the team builder for this one, guys. Let's get right into the match here. As you can see, my opponent did bring the Cacturne, Victini, Jirachi, Mega Tyranitar, Vikavolt, and the Tornadus. Very happy to not see certain things. Very happy to not see the Tapu Bulu. And also pretty happy to not see the Landorus. Obviously, Landorus not being Z-move eligible makes it a little bit more difficult versus my team, because he can't really run like Z-Fly. I guess he could run like SD Power Herb Fly or something weird like that. But that might be something that kind of held him up, was I had decent ground resists and immunities on my team, but he's not really able to tech on the flying coverage that like an SDZ Fly kind of Lando usually exerts pressure with. So that's definitely something that he might have been considering when he decided not to bring his Lando. It also has a lot of trouble dealing with Rotom Wash, because obviously I am immune to ground type moves. So yeah, I felt like that might have been what he was thinking in this matchup. Cacturne is definitely an interesting bring for sure. Good switch in for my my Rotom Wash. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily want to come in on a status type move like Toxic or Will-O-Wisp, but it does have the Water Absorb to eat up my Hydro Pumps, and then obviously resists my Electric type stab. I was expecting that to be Tapu Bulu, but it being Cacturne makes sense too. Cacturne does have the Z eligibility versus me, so I guess I have to be concerned about that as well. But yeah, just kind of looking at lead matchup here. Lycanroc Dusk is kind of my dedicated lead in this matchup, because I am Focus Sash. I should be able to take a hit from everything on his team. I don't think he even gets any multi-hits with any of the mons he's got. If I can get like the Tyranitar to Earthquake me or something, and then I can Endeavor it on the following turn, that's going to be really, really huge for opening a door for my Blacephalon. And of course, like I mentioned, getting up Stealth Rocks is a huge priority for me in this game. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to lead with my Lycanroc Dusk here and see what he wants to throw out. He actually leads with his Tornadus, so this is basically best case scenario for us. He's probably going to U-turn to break my Focus Sash, but this is pretty free Stealth Rocks for me. His only defogger on the team is Tornadus, so he's going to have to defog them away later anyways. And these are going to be really nice to pressure 3 Mons on his team, with the Victini, Vikavolt, and Tornadus all being weak, and still doing decent chip damage to things like the Tyranitar and the Cacturne. So I'm going to get my Stealth Rocks up here as he goes out into Jirachi. The fact that he went hard out into Jirachi lets me know he's probably a bulkier type variant, so I'm thinking he's just going to get up Stealth Rocks of his own here. But that's fine by me because he's way more pressured to defog than I am in this match, so I'm just going to go right out into my Hariyama, predicting him to go for either a U-turn or a Stealth Rock here. He actually goes for the Iron Head instead and does very little to this max physically defensive Hariyama, but he does reveal the leftovers on his Jirachi. So like I mentioned, this looks more like a support kind of set on his Jirachi, but this is a pretty free knockoff for me as the Vikavolt comes in. Vikavolt's obviously one of his better switch-ins to fighting type moves on the team, because Victini really doesn't appreciate coming in on those over the course of the match if it is offensive. But he goes out into Vikavolt here and I'm able to knock off a leftover, so he's probably running something like Dual Stab plus Roost, maybe Energy Ball on this Vikavolt, probably HP Ice actually to hit my Gliscor. So he's going to go right for the Thunderbolt here and whack my Rotom Wash upon switch-in. I was thinking about going into Alolan Muck that turn, but I felt like Rotom Wash was generally less useful to me than the Alolan Muck was. Like, I feel like Muck is really important for helping to deal with the Tornadus to a good extent, and it's a good late game win con versus team, assuming that's like a physically offensive variant of Victini. And even if it's not a physically offensive variant of Victini, Special shouldn't do too much to me. And I can keep recycling my berry up on things like that. So I felt like it was more important to keep Muck healthy than it was to keep Rotom healthy in this instance. So I did throw out the Rotom there to take a little bit of damage from this Vikavolt, but no big deal. I'm just going to go for Hydro Pump here. I don't think he'd go hard into Cacturne there just because the Vikavolt's already so low. It's basically dead to rocks more or less, so I felt like he was probably just going to sack it off and try and get some momentum here. And he definitely didn't want to cede momentum if I went for Volt Switch there. On his Cacturne coming in, I can get in something like my Blacephalon or my Muck, start to pressure him that way, my Hariyama, so I think it was fine there, just sacking off that thing and then going out into his Cacturne, which I'm going to Volt Switch out on to get some nice chip off and go right out into my little Muck. I'm really not thinking that this Cacturne can touch me too much. Like, the Cacturne is Grass Dark type, so I should resist it Dual Stab. He's definitely got Sucker Punch on it, and he's definitely got a Grass type move. But I really don't know what his last move would be. He does show SD here, so I really don't know what his last move would be. I literally did not know any of the moves that Cacturne had coming into this match, so I just did like a quick Earthquake search on Cerebi just to make sure it didn't get Earthquake, which it doesn't, but I missed that it got Dig. So on this turn, Reggie's going to break out the very nice tech with the Z Dig here on the SD Cacturne. He's going to blow away my Alolan Muck, which really sucks for me, because like I mentioned, that was a great late game win con. It was a great check to the Tornadus, and now it's dead. At the very least, we know the Tornadus is not Z move at this point, but losing out on my Muck there really sucks. I'm just going out into Hariyama here and click Close Combat. It really doesn't have very good switch-ins to that in general, as the Tornadus is going to come in here, take Stealth Rock damage, and still take about 33% from this Close Combat. So, unfortunately, I'm not offensive Hariyama. That would have done a lot more damage, but I felt like physically defensive still really is going to be really important in this match. So, obviously going to save it on his Tornadus. Definitely predicting him to defog here, because he should defog for his Tornadus and his Victini here. So I'm going to go right out, get my Lycanroc back in, and this seems like, ostensibly, this turn seems like a great time for me to just try to get my rocks back up, right? But if he's got Superpower or something like that, which he definitely could, he might just stay in and try to knock me out. He might go for a U-turn, whatever, try and get some initiative. I really don't know what he's going to try to do with his Tornadus here, but I'm thinking if he wants to risk it, because I'm just going to, like, ostensibly, I'm just setting Stealth Rocks back up anyways. He's losing too much momentum by just letting me set Stealth Rocks back up. If he wants to risk that and try and knock out my Lycanroc Dusk, I'm gonna knock out this Tornadus. So I'm gonna click Accel Rock this turn. I need to get rid of this Tornadus in order to keep my Stealth Rocks up for that Victini. Very important to chip down that Victini. So I felt like going for Accel Rock here was kind of my best overall play. Even if we went back into Jirachi, I could just sack my Lycanroc to get my rocks back up. So I felt like that was kind of the best play overall there. Just going for Accel Rock, KOing this Tornadus, and then, like I mentioned, now his Defogger is gone. I can get my Stealth Rocks back up, and they're going to be here to stay. They're going to be chipping down his Victini, they're going to be chipping down his Tyranitar, trying to catch my Blacephalon on the switch, and that's exactly what I want. So he's going to go for Iron Head here, knock out my Lycanroc, and we're in a pretty decent position here. We've got Stealth Rocks up. It's a very close game, obviously, still at this point in the match. It could go either way. But I felt like I was in a pretty good position here with this Jirachi, because I'm pretty certain that he's not carrying a Psychic type move either, which means my Hariyama is going to be super valuable for walling this and walling the Victini and the pretty much the rest of his team, honestly, now that the Tornadus is gone. Getting rid of that thing was huge for me. But he's going to reveal Substitute on his Jirachi, and you can see my Discharge does basically nothing. I'm pretty sure this was a Spadef invested Jirachi. And Discharge, I was just going for the para there to try and slow this Jirachi down for my Hariyama. But unfortunately, obviously don't get the para, which is only a 30% chance, that's whatever. But the big unfortunate part is that he's gotten behind a Substitute now, and I really don't know what this Jirachi is going to want to do. The fact that he's revealed Substitute here definitely indicates to me that he's not running a Psychic type move. Like, I don't think you fit a Psychic type move on this set if he's running like Wish or whatever, maybe Stealth Rocks. I really don't think he has room for Substitute on the set right now. So what I'm going to do here is Hydro Pump to break the Substitute. Thankfully I do land, and unfortunately for Virgie, he does miss a Toxic. We'll talk about that in a little bit, because it's definitely going to come back into play later in the match. But thankfully for me, I am able to dodge that Toxic, and I don't really want to stay in here and spam Hydro Pump while he spams Substitute, or definitely don't want him to get a Toxic off of my Rotom Wash either. So I'm just going to go for the Volt Switch here, get a little bit of chip damage off on the Jirachi. We actually see, or had seen, that we were faster on the previous turn, so he's definitely a very bulky variant of Jirachi. I'm just going to go out into my Hariyama, as unfortunately he misses another Toxic. I do have Rest on this set, so I wasn't too concerned about getting Toxic with the Hariyama, but definitely some bad luck for Virgie there, missing the double Toxic. Would have at least pressured me to rest with my Hariyama here, especially because now he's going to try and Iron Head flinch me down. He's definitely identified that this Hariyama is a huge threat to the rest of his team on the physically defensive side, I guess potentially especially if he's running a special variant of Victini. So definitely he's going to try to get rid of my Hariyama here, at least chip it down to the point where something like his Cacturne can deal with me. So he's just going to Iron Head me down, kind of just having to take the Rocky Helmet damage in stride, which is great. I'm going to go for Knockoff and KO this Jirachi. So that's another big threat that's gone, because it's obviously something that could have spread some status around my team, and potentially even flinch me down later in the game with things like my Rotom and my, well, actually my Rotom was faster. Well, my Hariyama specifically, I guess. So able to break through there, thankfully, and get off a Knockoff. KO that thing, and the Cacturne comes out, and I think my Hariyama is still pretty useful to me, and he's definitely going for a Grass type move this turn, not a Dark type move or Dig. So I definitely thought it was a pretty decent chance for me to get out into my Serperior and just start to click Leaf Storm, click Substitute, do whatever. I really don't think he can break a Substitute here, because like I mentioned, he's definitely got Grass move plus Sucker Punch, and his last move was Dig. So this is a pretty free Substitute with my Serperior, and I can just throw off a Glare on whatever wants to come in. If it's a DD variant of Tyranitar, that's great, and then whatever variant of Victini this is, getting a para off would be really nice for me. So he actually reveals to be Leftovers Victini, which indicates to me that he's probably running Substitute, so again, probably does not have Psychic type coverage on his Victini. So I'm just going to Glare here and paralyze that Victini. He goes for Glaciate, as I expected him to have for my Gliscor. And now it's like, okay, this is probably full-on special Victini with Substitute, Glaciate, Blue Flare, and Energy Ball. I'm almost certain that's his entire set. He never told me after the game. Well, I didn't ask, but I didn't learn after the game what his set actually was. So I'm going to go for Substitute here with my Serperior, just in case he's going to end up getting full parried. But that was maybe a little bit greedy of me to try and get off a Substitute there, because it's going to give him a little bit more Leftovers recovery, and really doesn't really gain me a whole lot, even though I got behind the Substitute there. So I'm going to go out into my Rotom Wash here, predicting him to definitely not go for a Grass type move, if anything, because he just wanted me to get up a Substitute for free. He's going to go for Glaciate there, slow me down a little bit, and I kind of make a misplay here, because I do see my Leftovers go first. Well, at the time I didn't see my Leftovers go first on the Victini, so that actually means I thought I might be slower with the -1 speed. So I just hard doubled out into Blacephalon instead of Volt Switching. Volt Switch basically just would have got me a little bit of momentum on this Cacturne here. A little bit more chip damage to limit its Stealth Rock switch-ins, but unfortunately I'm going to go out with Blacephalon here hard instead of Volt Switching out. But that's fine, because I am, as I mentioned, going to double out predicting the Tyranitar. I could have, as I mentioned in my team builder, doubled out into Hariyama here, but I felt like Serperior was less valuable. So even if he decided to stay in and attack me, I felt like it was fine letting Serperior take damage. I just really didn't want Hariyama taking damage there. So maybe I should pause it to explain that play a little bit better. Blacephalon coming in, obviously the Tyranitar is coming in every turn, right? So I'm definitely doubling out of Blacephalon. And Hariyama, ostensibly, is the better switch into Tyranitar. Like, it can come in, it can get a rest off, gets health back, or even just fire off a close combat at this point and do some big damage to his team. But if I go Hariyama and he decides to sack off his pretty chipped Cacturn to my Blacephalon just so he can come in with Tyranitar and Pursuit Trap me afterwards, I am super screwed because Hariyama is very, very important for checking this Tyranitar later in the game. And I felt like Serperior also punished the Tyranitar coming in. I could get a Para off, I could do some damage to it with Leaf Storm. He's going to have to reveal his set a little bit to me, so if he's got like a Crunch, Stone Edge, whatever, to knock out my Serperior. Serperior was much more expendable, he's a much better middle ground play in this instance, and I'm definitely happy that I made that double into Serperior rather than into the Hariyama, even though I could have gained more, like I said, from going to Hariyama. It's just way too risky for me to be throwing away my Hariyama, assuming he might be throwing away his, in the event that he might have been throwing away his Cacturn there. So, just wanted to explain that play a little bit better, just as to why I went Serperior here instead of going Hariyama, even though I definitely was thinking that the Tyranitar would come in. But yeah, so I went on to Serperior here. I'm just going to click Glare on the Tyranitar. DD Tyranitar is really the biggest threat to my team at this point in the match, so getting a Para off on that thing is obviously going to keep it nice and slow for my Rotom Wash, and also for my Hariyama as well. Excuse me. And he's going to just Ice Punch and knock out my Serperior, so that's fine with me. I can go right onto my Hariyama here and click Rest. Like I mentioned, I was just trying to get this thing in safely, so that obviously I live any hit from the Tyranitar at this range, and I can just go for Rest here and get my health back, and then I can just start Sleep Talking on his team. Obviously, if he is a DD variant of Tyranitar, I don't want it to be total setup fodder, so having the Sleep Talk there means I could potentially roll Close Combat. I'm just going to go for Close Combat here anyways, in case he decide to stay in and sack off his Tyranitar or anything like that. Oh, I thought I went for Rest that turn. Never mind. I went for Close Combat that turn. I don't know why I didn't go for Rest that turn, but I went for Close Combat that turn. Do some decent damage to the Victini on the switch in. That's fine. I'm going to go Hard Blacephalon here. Not necessarily predicting an Energy Ball, as he does go for Energy Ball, but because I definitely wasn't expecting him to go for anything that was going to do any kind of damage to Blacephalon. So even if he's got like Shadow Ball or something like that, I wasn't thinking he would go for it that turn. And Blacephalon's able to get in here on the Energy Ball and just click Shadow Ball. Like, I could have doubled out predicting the Tyranitar once again, but I thought since I got him last time, he might be inclined to just stay in this time with his Victini and sack it off. Just get his Tyranitar back in, especially if it was a DD variant of Tyranitar, like I mentioned. But unfortunately, that's going to cost me my Blacephalon here, so I'm just going to die to Pursuit. Good play on his end, going for Pursuit was pretty much no drawback. But unfortunately, my Blacephalon is dead. I was trying to save it for the Victini if I could, because obviously a Scarf Shadow Ball sweep has potential in the late game if I can kind of play around his Sucker Punches with a Cacturn, but that's fine. I can just go into my Hariyama here and click Rest. Actual Rest this time, as the Victini comes back out. 2 close combats would have knocked out the Victini, but I'm not actually certain if I'm faster than it because I'm not running any speed on my Hariyama, and Para is obviously only half speed in this generation, so I'm going to go for Rest with my Hariyama here, get back up to full health, and now basically nothing on his team can touch me, so I'm just going to go for Sleep Talk here. Hope I roll Knockoff to KO this Victini, and even rolling 2 rests wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So I'm just going to go for Sleep Talk here, and unfortunately I roll a Rest first. Basically I just don't really want to roll a Close Combat, because even though to put Victini in range of Stealth Rocks, I really don't want my Hariyama to die, so I'm really hoping to roll a knockoff here with my Hariyama if anything, but Rest is okay too. I'll take that, and I'll go for Sleep Talk again this turn as he goes for another Blue Flare, doing very little to me as you can see with my max pretty close to max bid up investment, not natured though, and thick fat ability, so I'm going to go for Sleep Talk once again this turn, and Hariyama the Goat is going to roll a knockoff, so great turn from Hariyama there, rolling the knockoff to KO the Victini. I'm going to wake up the next turn, and Cacturn and Tyranitar both cannot knock me out from the range I'm at, and I'm just going to be able to pick up another KO with Close Combat here, so he's going to go out into his Cacturn here, and I'm like, well, I just can't let this thing set up an SD. My play is 100% click Close Combat this turn. He definitely reads that, goes out into his Tyranitar, and what that allows him to do is put my Hariyama in range of the Close Combat drop, or in range of a Seed Bomb after the Close Combat defense drops here. So a very good play by Virgie there, sacking his Tyranitar to get his Cacturn back in and potentially win with Sucker Punch. Well, Seed Bomb plus Sucker Punch, but I have really no reason not to save my Hariyama at this point, or to save my Hariyama at this point, excuse me, because Rotom Wash is going to live any +2 Sucker Punch variant of Cacturn since he's not running Life Orb. And this is kind of where that Toxic comes in from earlier in the game. Him missing the Toxic means that I would have had a little bit less HP on me, of course, because it would have gotten a couple of turns of chip off on me. My calc still says that Adamant's +2 Sucker Punch, or Adamant neutral Sucker Punch, doesn't KO Rotom from the range that it would have been at had I been Toxic that turn. So I haven't done the math recently, but I did the math back after the game was played. And I remember that Toxic would have chipped down my Rotom Wash a little bit more than it was, obviously. But given the turns that it was on the field, and my Leftovers recovery counteracting the first turn, the range of HP I was at was still out of range of neutral Adamant Sucker Punch from Cacturne. So I'm not certain if the Toxic miss mattered. Obviously, he could have crit me with Sucker Punch potentially later in the game, but what that's actually going to do here is force Virgie to go for Swords Dance here, hoping I choke and go hard into my Rotom Wash, predicting to go for Seed Bomb. But I'm just going to stay in close combat with my Hariyama. Like I mentioned, I lived neutral Sucker Punch with my Rotom from the range it was at, and I would have been able to knock him out with Discharge at that point in the match. So, very good game to Virgie. Sorry again for the Toxic misses. I still am not certain if the actual damage mattered on Rotom Wash, but the kind of interaction of those turns definitely mattered, because he had to go for Toxic on the Rotom Wash in the first place. Because he missed it, he went for another one as I went into Hariyama, and that one missed too. I don't think that one mattered as much, because I would have just rested on the Jirachi rather than spamming knockoff at it while I tried to flinch me down. But definitely the two Toxic misses still mattered in that sense, like the gameplay sense, they definitely mattered. I don't know if the exact calc mattered with the Cacturne on the back end, but definitely very lucky for me to dodge those Toxic misses, those Toxics there, and we're going to move to 5-0, so very good game again to Virgie. Sorry again for the misses there. Hopefully next time we meet we can have a clean game, potentially in playoffs here. We are sitting at 5-0 now, so definitely looking pretty good for playoffs. Virgie's still at 2-3, very much in striking distance for at least a lower seed in the bracket. So yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you guys very much for watching to this point if you did, and I hope to see you guys all in the next video. Later.